Kelly tells me I have 10 minutes. Giving a retired politician 10 minutes is, I'll do my best. First, it's great to be with you, and I'm kind of a near neighbor since I've been teaching at Northeastern 9 months of the year for the past 24 years since I left the State House. But difficult though it is, Kitty and I drag ourselves out of New England in late December. And I teach during the winter quarter at UCLA. It's a terrible burden, but somebody's got to do it. Particularly in a winter like this one. Although I got to tell you, it was very painful for a guy like me to watch what was going on here. So, fixing the tea. It's not that hard. Were any of you alive in 1978 when we had the great blizzard of 78? A scattering of you. Although what you had this past winter on a continuing basis was lousier. The blizzard of 78 was by far the worst snowstorm we've had in a century. And we had service back on the T in 36 hours. How did that happen? Well, leading and getting things done in the public sector requires a couple of things. First, it takes a certain amount of passion. I've been riding the T since I was 5. Everybody used to say, well, why is the governor riding the T? Well, for one thing, I've been riding it all my life. And secondly, if you're as focused on transit and high-speed rail as I am, and you're driving around a Cadillac, there's a kind of disconnect there. And you'd be amazed, folks, at what you learn on the T as governor. You learn a lot. Secondly, it's the people that you pick to do the job. I had the best state transportation secretary in the country. Nobody came close to equaling Fred Salvucci, the son of an Italian immigrant bricklayer who had 2 degrees from MIT and political smarts coming out of his ears. And it was Salvucci, really, who put the team together that we assembled in 1975 when I was first elected to run the T, which was a basket case at the time. You have no idea how bad it was. And our commuter rail system, which was still privately owned, was being run by the old private railroads. And they were terrible. And we were subsidizing them. So the first thing we did was kick the private railroads out and bring Amtrak, which has been in the news lately, and on whose board I served proudly for 5 years. We brought in Amtrak to run the commuter rail system. And Amtrak ran the commuter rail system in this state for 25 years, did a great job, 96, 97, 98% on time, until some folks that I guess don't like public corporations in 2001, 2002 started arguing that we could do better if we privatized commuter rail. Meaning what? Putting out to bid and inviting the private sector. There's only one problem, folks. There are very few people in the private sector that can run you a passenger railroad. And when the RFP came out, the then CEO of Amtrak, who had been my chief of operations in 1978 during the Great Blizzard, the best transit and passenger rail guy in America, David Gunn from Melrose, Massachusetts, a Massachusetts native, basically said to the T, look, this RFP is not biddable. You can't get insurance for this. Well, they didn't care. Gunn, who's not a guy that wastes a lot of time, said, so if you don't want us, I got a national railroad to run, go find somebody else. And so they've been looking for somebody else ever since. A former general manager of the T, pretty decent guy, worked for me, created a company to run commuter rail. And there was no effective competition at all because there were very few people that can come run a commuter rail system for you. He was there for many, many years until current management decided to pick this Keolis outfit, the only other bidder. And I don't know the Keolis people. They obviously have not ever met snow. So during the course of all of this, when I was on the West Coast, I called Gunn, who, by the way, has gone on to run the 4 biggest transit systems in North America, as well as be the best CEO that Amtrak ever had. He was so good, the Bushies fired him. I'm serious. And by this time, we had taken over commuter rail. We own it. We had modernized it, all this kind of stuff. And I said to him, Dave, how did you get service back in a day and a half? In the worst blizzard in the century. He said, you really want to know? I said, yeah. So the first thing we did is what you must do, run the trains 24 hours a day so that there is no drifting. Not too complicated. And the second thing he did, real high tech, he said we went out in the street, hired 300 guys, gave them shovels and told them to shovel snow. That didn't happen either, folks. Now look, we have one of the best public transportation systems in the country. I had a lot to do with that. And we had a huge fight before that to stop the building of a California-style freeway system in, on, and over the city of Boston, which in my opinion would have destroyed the city. In fact, it included something called the Interbelt Highway, for those of us who care about the Fenway, 8 lanes elevated down what is now Ruggles Street, 3 feet from the Museum of Fine Arts, right through Frederick Law Olmsted's Emerald Necklace in front of Simmons and Emanuel. You with me? Through Beach Park in Brookline. The highway engineers always were looking for parks. Across the Charles River, smashing its way through Central Square, 8 lanes elevated, as ugly as the Central Artery, and over to Somerville. And if you go through the Big Dig now and up, and you approach Somerville, you see a little stub of a highway, which is where the Interbelt Highway. And we had a 10-year battle, folks, to kill that. I was the first elected official in the state to oppose this master highway plan. And we finally killed it. And thanks to a sainted man named Thomas P. O'Neill Jr., who represented Cambridge and subsequently became the Speaker of the House, we were the first state in the country to be permitted to use that highway money for public transportation. It had never been done before. You couldn't bust the highway trust fund. If it was gasoline tax money, it had to be used for highways. And we got $3 billion to pour into the system. Now, I wasn't here, so I can't tell you exactly what was going on. But I will tell you this. If you want to fix the T, if we want the kind of public transportation system that we should have and can have, it's a combination of some resources and excellent management. Some resources and excellent management. People with a passion to run a system that they're proud of. And a system that involves career employees actively in the system. We've had more task forces and outside groups opining over what the T needs. To the best of my knowledge, none of the members of any of those task forces had any operating experience when it comes to transit. How about at least one working stiff who knows something about how you run the system? So I hope the new governor will understand this. I like his new Secretary of Transportation, who was the deputy director, if you'll pardon the expression, the Dukakis Center of Northeastern. And Stephanie's a very good person. But there is no excuse, folks, what happened on the T. And it's really a question of excellent people putting an excellent team together, and at the same time providing some resources so you can maintain and strengthen the system and expand it. I mean, the people of southeastern Massachusetts need a rail connection to Boston, and it shouldn't cost $2.5 billion. That's absurd. We have a 1-mile gap, in case you've missed it, between South and North Station, right? 1 mile. It's like the red line stopping at South Station and resuming at Kendall. It's ridiculous. Our plan for the Big Dig was my project. I take no responsibility for its execution, however. That came. And by the way, the harbor cleanup, same price originally, came in on time and under budget. That has to do with people, too. But our plan for the Big Dig was to put a double rail line. You know, if you're going to tear the city up, connect the 2 stations, right? Well, the Reagan administration fought us tooth and nail on the Big Dig. They went absolutely apoplectic on the subject of a double rail line. Imagine, it would finally connect the 2 stations. You rip up the entire city, but you don't connect the 2 stations. And that link between North and South Station would take 60,000 cars off the road every day. It would practically pay for itself in additional revenue. And it would fully integrate the commuter rail system. Not only that, it would make it possible for high-speed trains not only to come to Boston, but to go through Boston, north to Maine, and ultimately to Montreal. Because one of these days, I hope before I leave this planet, we're going to have a high-speed 3-hour train from Boston to Montreal. What do you think? What do you think? Anyway, and we've got to keep moving on this stuff, folks. I mean, it's not just a question of doing a few repairs. In any event, it's not that hard. Now, in the meantime, I hope before I get off this platform that you guys will continue to ride the T, trying to advocate for the T. I'm not sure I can get Charlie Baker on the T. I hope one of these days I can. There's something to be said for that. And I'll tell you one last story before I quit, Kelly. When I first became governor, as I say, the T was a basket case. And in those days, we had the old-fashioned trolley cars. You remember the trolley cars? Any of you ride those things? We used to call them PCC cars. You can still see them on the Milton connection from Ashmont. They're still out there. And they were breaking down 3 days out of 5. I'm not kidding you. And it was winter, and I'd just taken over. A little embarrassing. Look, it wasn't my fault. I hadn't been there, but, you know, here's Dukakis, the big transit, the damn system is breaking down. Finally, after about 4 of these breakdowns, I went up and said to the motorman, what the hell is the problem here? He said, they're not replacing the pans. I said, what's a pan? He said, it's a piece of metal that is underneath the trolley car that seals off the motor so that snow and ice can't get in there. They're not replacing the pans, and the snow and ice is getting in there, and it's screwing up. I got to the State House, picked up the phone, and I called Secretary Salvucci. He said, Fred, I talked to the motorman on my streetcar today. He says they're not replacing the pans. Salvucci said, I'll be back to you in a few hours. Called me in the afternoon. He said, the guy's right. He's not replacing the pans. So we replaced the pans, and the breakdowns stopped. Isn't that amazing? It's not that hard, folks. We've got a great public transportation system. It really defines what this city is all about. It's had a huge contribution to who we are. And I hope that this new administration will understand that and give it back to us. In the meantime, you guys keep riding, and so will I. I now have a senior pass. It's the best value in America. Thanks very much.